Okay, we're back. The next thing I wanted to talk about is this Minnesota Public Interest Research Group versus Butts. So it's the Butts case, which is, a funny word, a funny last name. So in this case, which was, what's the year? All right, 1974. Um, the citizen group opposed modifications. There were logging contracts up in northern Minnesota in the Boundary Waters, and the logging contracts had been around. It was pre-NEPA, and the Forest Service was modifying these logging contracts. Extending them, maybe changing the amount of timber that they could harvest, things like that. Boundary Waters, that's up in northern Minnesota, very beautiful area. There's like 1 million acres of lakes and streams. It's one of like a big canoeing wilderness area. And also there's a lot of timber. So the issue here was because you're not like adding contracts, you're just modifying them. The Forest Service says this isn't a major action. This is something that's, a non-major action, which is not covered by NEPA. And one of the things that, they have to do, whether or not this logging negatively impacted the environment or could potentially do that, which is why then they have to do the EIS. So the court reasoned that like an agency can't just say, yeah, that's no big deal. We're just modifying contracts. It's a non-major action. They can't just have discretion on whether or not they follow NEPA's requirements. So and then we'll talk about this on the next slide, but any action that could have a significant effect on the environment needs an EIS. Whether it's negative or positive, any effect on the environment needs an EIS. So the court on this, to determine whether you need an EIS, it's a reasonableness standard. Okay, if it reasonably anticipates a significant impact on the environment. So again, it's not in their discretion. So then they start talking about like whether or not, so what reasonably anticipated to have a significant effect. So would this have a significant effect? Forest Service said that, it doesn't, yeah, there's an effect on the environment, but it doesn't affect the humans who use the area. They never see the sails. They never see the loggers. It's not in the human area. But the court found that NEPA cares not as well, not only, the direct human effects that like somebody's going to get hit by a tree when it was being felled. NEPA was also concerned with indirect effects to the environment. And the courts talks about increasing recognition that man and all other life may significantly be affected by actions which appear insignificant on the surface, kind of like a butterfly effect kind of thing. So that, the court did hold that it was a major federal action that significantly affects the quality of the human environment, and then an EIS is required. So that's the Butts case. So after an EIS is drafted, there's a big, rigorous approval process. There's a lot of public input and comments. The EIS has to be made available to the public, the Council on Environmental Quality, and the president. And everybody in the world is invited to make comments concerning the project. And that's part of all of the process. And then all of this stuff goes together in a big old document called the Record of Decision. And that is the final agency action related to the EIS. So the Record of Decision is what, if somebody is claiming that the agency made a bad decision, that is what can be reviewed by a court under NEPA. Okay. So the judicial rule does not like really, if a court is reviewing an agency action, they don't really review the ROD. They review whether or not they completed the the ROD. They did all of the steps that NEPA requires. Okay, so there, the court goes to back to Citizens to Protect Overton Park versus Volpe that we talked about, I think in our first lecture, maybe. Um, they do a hard look as to whether the agency followed the NEPA steps. After that, if they followed all the NEPA steps, then then really you're given discretion. Um, the agency is given discretion as long as they followed the steps, and then your standard is whether or not they did something that was arbitrary or capricious, which is a lesser standard. Stuff that's come on NEPA recently, it's just like a ping pong match. This decade with the environment. So under Trump, August 2017, there was an executive order to the Trump administration thought these environmental impact statements are taking too long. We can't do anything environmentally. And they wanted to change the process of 3 to 5 years to make an EIS to 2 years. And so that was effective 2017. President Biden comes into office in January and revokes that. So that's funny. Just an interesting recent case that is close to home: Protect Our Park versus Buttigieg. The lawsuit alleges NEPA violations when in the parkland that they're trying to build the Obama library, but the court held that NEPA was followed appropriately in that case. So the park or the Obama library building goes on. There are a bunch of proposed CEQ regulations, changes that were proposed under Trump. Things like 1 year limit to create an environmental assessment, 2 years for EIS, expanding categorical exclusions, reduction, this should say red tape. I don't know what red tape means. Let me get there. Red tape. Edit that so you won't have to see that. So they're like, we need to streamline government, right? With all this environmental impact stuff is taking too long. So that was the effort for kind of streamlining lining NEPA. And then people said that we have to maybe not do this. We want to make sure that EAs are looking into climate impact. We don't want categorical exclusions expanded. So this is actually your discussion board assignment. Now, spoiler alert, these proposed CEQ regulations were withdrawn, but it's just an exercise in creating a comment to a proposed regulation change. Okay, so this is the 2021 one that kind of revokes those proposed changes. As a paralegal, if you're dealing in environmental law, you might be the one keeping track of what's going on with the APA and NEPA. So there are checklists, organization charts, calendars. You have to keep that all straight. This link actually kind of gives you. Is this the one? Oh, well, in the FEMA one, because I was on the FEMA site when I was prepping for this class, they had a bunch of checklists and EA tools, scoping checklist template, evaluation sheet template. So kind of forms and things that you can look through to help you keep track of the process as it goes along. Homework. Okay, so now we're back in our module. This is actually our first week where we have a written assignment, which I actually just discussed. All right, let me get to the module activities. There's a bunch of supplemental stuff. Oh, there's another new back on NEPA, new developments. There is a decision that just came out this week, that a federal court blocked an oil and gas lease sale in the Gulf of Mexico. So I think they tried to, the Biden administration, it was something that happened under Trump that had to go through. So the Biden administration had initially blocked the lease sale, and the board reversed that course, and because a nationwide injunction invalidated that. So then now the court says, nope, they didn't look at NEPA, so we can't have these drilling contracts. So look at that article. Okay, so now go on to the assignments. We have the discussion board. The discussion board is on NEPA generally. Do you think that NEPA's doing what it intended to do? Okay, so we have our quiz, we have a NEPA discussion board. The written assignment, as I said, is those proposed changes to the CEQ regulations, and you have to draft a comment, because as we talked about public input, any proposed regulation, there's an opportunity for public comment. So it's an exercise in writing a comment in response to a proposed environmental regulation. And then we have our test next week. Okay, so I'll have it open from the 8th to the 14th, but then once you start it, you have, I think it's 2 hours to complete. The topics, yeah, so it's open book. You're going to need computer and internet access. You don't have to do it at a certain time, but you do have to complete it in the time allotted. Otherwise, it's just going to be submitted. We're going to be talking about, our legal foundations, history of environmental laws, standing, all the stuff we've done in the first 3 weeks. OSHA, NEPA, look at those, the important terms we've gone over. Pay attention to the way the cases interpret environmental laws, and you can study really from the PowerPoints. I'm not going to do anything that's not on the PowerPoints. I don't think I have any short answer. It's multiple choice, true, false, and fill in the blanks. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out. And good luck on and pay attention to the due dates. So the quiz and the discussion board are due in this, before the test, and then the written assignment is due the week after the test. And, make sure you do the reading for the week after that. All right. Have a great one, and I will chat with you soon.